about neoclassicism, what we really need to talk about is this turning away from the opulence and the over-the-top drama that was really at the forefront of art during the Baroque and the Rococo periods. And instead, we looked further back to Rome and Greece. And Poe had a fantastic quote that really summed up this time period. He said it was the glory that was Greece and the grandeur of Rome. And so during this time period, art was considered to be very serious and solemn. There was a lot of focus on ancient history and mythology. So not a ton of, modern events were often depicted in work. There was a lot of this style that had these clean, precise figures. The brushwork was very, very smooth and impeccable, and it had simple compositions, nothing too over the top or busy. The first artist we're going to talk about is David, and he is considered the founder of the neoclassical art movement. He was completely obsessed with Greek and Roman art, and that is really seen in his work. Many of his subjects are from mythology or ancient history. David was also something of a revolutionary. He used his art to inspire the French Republic to communicate ideas about the French Revolution. So this is one of his classical pieces. So this is The Oath of Herati by David. And this is really about a story that took place outside of ancient Rome and this family. So we're not talking about anything modern. You'll notice the composition is very clean and very dramatic. We do still have the ideas of chiaroscuro happening here, so we have these figures kind of against a darker background. This does have an element of drama to it, but it's a little bit more subdued than what you would have seen in some of the Baroque work that we looked at previously. Conversely, this is one of his more contemporary peers. This is The Death of Marat by David. Marat was a writer who was actually murdered, and he was a close friend of David, and he memorialized his work in this painting. And so what is really fantastic about this piece was that it is actually an early known piece of propaganda. This piece was well known because of Marat's siding with the French revolutionaries, and David's painting of this was a call to arms to continue the fight. Any of you guys who have played Assassin's Creed may find this familiar. In the Assassin's Creed that took place in France, this storyline does come up, and so you have to kind of solve the death of Marat, and so this scene is depicted in Assassin's Creed. So it's that lovely little intersection of art and modern entertainment. The next artist is Ingres, and he studied under David and was considered his star pupil. He was this amazingly detailed, impeccable draftsman. He believed that paint should be as smooth as the skin of an onion, and you should never see any brushstrokes, which is very much in contrast. Think back to some of the later work that we looked at by Rembrandt, where you could see all of those brushstrokes. Ingres did not want you to see that. But his use of line and the way that he created line in his piece would go on to inspire future modern artists like Matisse, Picasso, and Degas. So this is his portrait of the Princess de Broglie by Ingres. And when we look at this, you look at it and you're like, okay, it's a really nice painting. But what I really like to do is zoom in here, and I want you to notice how unbelievably smooth this painting is. And I want you to notice the detail that he has included here. You can see that the fabric of the dress is clearly like this very sky blue satin. You can see that the chair has a slight pattern, and you can even see as the fabric folds and tucks into the back of the chair. One of the things that I think is most fantastic about this particular piece is the lace that he has rendered here. I mean, it is luminous. You can see the fabric underneath it. There's an incredible amount of detail. It shimmers and is perfect. And in order to create something that detailed, takes an absolute immense amount of skill and time. And then we have Grand Odalisque. And this was a series of portraits that was very popular at the time, very much a throwback to some of the Greek and Roman portraiture and styling. When we look at this again, we notice his ability to render fabrics in the most fantastic way. But for me, what I think is always amazing is the feet on the woman here. Feet are really incredibly tricky to render accurately, especially like the bottoms of feet. I know that sounds crazy, but feet are really, really hard. Feet and hands. And often you will see artists avoid depicting feet and hands, especially artists that are very skilled because of their complexity. But the feet are beautiful here. You can see the arch. You can see that the heel is slightly darker. You can see the curvature as it leads up to the toes. Really just a fantastic rendering of the human form here from Ingres. We're going to skip across the pond, as they say, and talk about America. Neoclassicism slammed headlong into America as well. And it really did coincide with the founding of the United States as a country. And it was deeply influenced because of Thomas Jefferson in particular. He was a big fan of the neoclassic style, and that really did help propel it becoming the American style for quite a while. We did adopt a lot of those Roman symbols. So if we think about the words Capitol, Senate, Rotunda, we use those Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian columns all the time. So these were all things that kind of we pulled from Greek and Roman ancestry and pulled them into the American neoclassic movement. So the first artist we're going to talk about is John Singleton Copley. And Copley was America's first well-known artist. And he was really a self-taught artist. He studied a lot of anatomy books. He studied the work of old masters and English-style portrait painters. His portraits were not only popular, because of his ability to render subjects accurately, but because he had this amazing ability to render this beautiful, brilliant light and reflection, but also convey something about a person's social status or their expression that revealed their importance or character. So look at the beautiful light on this, a boy with a flying squirrel. Just absolutely luminous. He appears to glow. And he doesn't have to glow because of a dark background. That red, while it's very, very rich, is not incredibly dark. So we don't have a whole lot of that chiaroscuro happening here. The other thing I want to point out is his use of reflection. So look at the tabletop. It's this beautiful, polished wood tabletop, and you can see the reflection of his shirt, that little glass. You can even see the reflection of the chain around the tiny little flying squirrel. So he really was a master of reflections. And that's also seen here in this portrait of Paul Revere by Copley. You can see Paul Revere's shirt reflected. You can see his tools reflected in the wood. And then on top of it, I think the most impressive reflection of all is this teapot that he's holding, and you can see the reflection of his fingers, which are curved, and teapots of course are curved, and you can see that that reflection is curved. That takes in a lot of skill in order to do accurately and not look weird to our eyes. The other fun thing about this portrait is that Paul Revere does end up looking like someone that we see a lot, and it is actually something that is mentioned if you Google Paul Revere. The autocomplete for it looks like Jack Black. So here you can see, I just love this. Jack Black and Paul Revere look very, very similar. Maybe Jack Black actually is Paul Revere. Who knows? The next artist we're going to talk about is Gilbert Stewart. And he is considered the other great American neoclassic painter. Again, he's got this luminous, transparent ability to paint skin. And he left this amazing legacy of portraits in the United States. We're going to look at a couple here. You're going to recognize them. You've definitely seen them before. But he did Presidents Washington, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, John Adams, John Quincy Adams. So basically, if you were an incredibly important person in the Americas right after the founding of our country, Gilbert Stewart was painting your portrait. So that is how important he is to American society. So everybody has seen this portrait of George Washington. It is iconic. And this is the portrait of Washington by Stewart. Again, we've all seen this. It is how we think of George Washington, this and him crossing the Delaware. But this is like the formal presidential portrait that we think of. Here is a portrait of William Grant by Stewart, and I love this because there is something a little cheeky about it. He's actually ice skating, and it is this fantastic portrait. I don't know many people who ice skate with their arms crossed over their chest, so I think that's why perhaps I find it a little cheeky, along with the expression of William Grant here. But you can see he's very accurately rendered. It is a beautiful portrait. The light is very soft and glowing. And then additionally, the skin has that beautiful luminous quality to it that Stewart was known for. So that is all we have for our Neoclassicism unit. We will be talking about another one next week.